It used to feel like the left was more in tune with the common man, right? And now it's like they're so far gone. And the conservatives, it feels like they're the ones that are actually like grounded in reality and what people actually want.
Yeah.
I've even see a lot of conservatives talking about, getting off of birth control because of how it messes with your hormones, and talking about like the food that we eat and how it's so full of chemicals and all of this stuff. And it feels like that wasn't like something that was like conservatives talked about even 10 years ago. And now like that's a big part of the conservative movement, is even talking about like the toxic chemicals that we're exposed to all the time, and how our hormones are being manipulated, and it's affecting our psyche.
Yeah, that's right. And so up and what's happened is that the trust in the kind of establishment institutions that conservatives have had for a long time is basically the drain plug got pulled and it's almost all drained out. Conservatives rightly don't trust our universities. They don't trust CDC or FDA. They don't, oh, the FDA said we're supposed to go eat like axle grease or whatever. Like, you're not going to do that. Like, let's have some steak, and it is, and for a little while when that happens, we got looked at like we're crazy. And it just, as my Australian friend, I guess it's an Australian saying, is check the scoreboard, mate. It's just again and again and again and again and again the reasons. Not to say that we're getting everything right, uh, or that we may be skeptical of some things we shouldn't be skeptical of, but the fact of the matter is just the number of times that we're right versus the number of times that we're not right now points to the fact that our institutions have been massively corrupted. And what the left used to have there was they always up until literally the last 10 years, the left has been highly attuned to corporate corruption. They're always pointing out, oh, the corporation is buying off the politician. They're always pointing out, well, the reason we believe XYZ about this or that is because Monsanto paid a bunch of, or because the sugar lobby paid a bunch of, and the reason, so they're very, very attuned to corporate corruption. But now the corporations, following this Occupy Wall Street change we talked about before, now the corporations are doing their ideological bidding, and they are the biggest sycophants. I'm trying to think of words that aren't bad words to say for like big banks and big corporations ever. It's the most amazing thing. It's actually fun to get together as a conservative with an old school Marxist. I mean, like from like old school, sit down and talk to a leftist of today, it's like immediately you and the Marxist are saying the same stuff against the wokies because they are so invested in like the corporations and the institutions, and
Mhm.
they actually can't be trusted. So they've lost their grip because they've decided to trust exactly the things that just straight up can't be trusted. Whereas conservatives have awakened broadly to the fact that we can't trust this stuff. Like, I mean, when I saw the other day, there was some like vitamin B supplement that the FDA was considering taking off the market. And I went and bought 10 of them, like 10 bottles. Like, that's apparently good for you. I'm going to go get that.
That's so true. That is hilarious. Yeah, that's good reasoning, actually. I would
It
feel
is.
the
It's
same
like they're
way.
trying to kill us or something. I don't know. Or they're just
Yep.
derelict, or like they believe their own. At some point, it's like South Park did that episode of smelling your own farts. It's like they've gone down the rabbit hole of like believing their own BS to such a degree that it's hard to say on any given person. I don't want to say that everybody doing this stuff is like this evil mastermind. Most of them aren't smart enough to be masterminds in the first place, and they're too lazy to be evil. And so most of the people that are involved in this are just like, well, that's what the paper says, it must be true, we just have to go along with what it says. And so somebody writes a paper that says, we have to have um, that racism is the greatest public health threat since ever. And so now we're going to do all these anti racism things, and that's somehow going to stop the next pandemic. Like, I saw a paper literally about that the other day, and people are like, CDC is like, yes, let's go. Um, and then so the normal people look at that and they're like, CDC done lost its mind. We're not going to listen to them anymore. And that's kind of where we are as a country right now.
So how do we fight this? This,
Expose it.
global. Expose it.
Keep
Okay.
exposing it, keep making fun of it, keep making it embarrassing and cringe. Um, Talk to people, try to get them to see through the gaps in the narrative. It really, I mean, it sounds so dumb, but when I said that my mission in life right now is to sow the largest amount of distrust for these things as I can in the smallest amount of time, that's because a lot of what they have two ways that they can achieve most of what they want to achieve. Either they can get us to trust them and thus buy in voluntarily, or they have to try to force us. If they try to force us, well, maybe that's a test and we see what happens. I hope they don't. It's not a guarantee. I hope they're not that dumb. But if we don't trust them, we won't willingly give up our freedom, our rights. We won't willingly say, oh well, they're just going to go ahead and make climate zones, and we just have to stay home. Nobody's going to do that if we don't trust them, and we might
Mm.
fight it back off and force them to back up on their back off of their policies, their positions, force them to regroup and rebrand. It seems like they have infinite money, but they don't have infinite money. um, it costs them a lot every time one of their big plans gets foiled and they have to go cook up a new one. And so by getting more and more people to understand something is wrong, even if they don't understand everything about what's happening, or they don't believe everything that people like me say, getting them to understand that something is wrong and that these people should not be trusted blindly and we should double check everything. Um, that is absolutely crucial to fighting that. It's the most valuable thing to do to fight them. I just had this conversation with somebody I guess I shouldn't name, but is a fairly important character in national politics in this country this morning, and she had been in conversation with um, a very important person in the state of Florida. And we were talking, and she said, you know, I was telling him about this, that, and the other thing in one of the laws that they passed this year, and he was like, "What's that? I've never heard of it." And this is a huge, huge issue. And this is what I find. I've spoken in front of groups of legislators. I've spoken in front of groups of like school superintendents and things, associations and things like this. And what I find is that these people just don't know. The people we're counting on because they have their hands attached to the levers of power to be able to do something about these issues don't know. They're not. Everybody wants to jump and say they must know it's controlled opposition. No, some of these people are that, but most of these people are genuinely just unable to keep up with the fact that the jargon changes every 15 minutes, and it's been so much and so fast, and it's all so new, so that huge programs are being based off of words that they don't realize are traps. And the easiest way to stop that, and this is the logic behind what I'm saying, the easiest way to stop that is if large numbers of their constituents that they represent, or large numbers of people that they're likely to run into in everyday life, have some understanding of the problem and communicate it to them so that it breaks down the
Mm.
idea that it's normal to go along with all this stuff, or that we're in business as usual, and opens them up to the idea that we're actually in this weird, twisty linguistic universe where it's really easy to make a mistake until you realize that you've got to be very savvy with how you approach uh, language and issues. So, if we want our leaders to be able to fight back, they have to understand it. And the best way for that to happen is for lots of people around them or that are their constituents to know enough about the issues to bring the issues to their table. If it's one person saying it again and again, they probably aren't going to listen. But if it happens over and over and over and over and over for thousands of people, then all of a sudden they're normal people too. They're gonna be like, what's going on with this? What's happening? And then they're gonna start looking into it. Then they're gonna start to see what it is. And then the people who actually can do something about this in a reasonable and legal and sane way become informed enough to start taking steps in that direction. And we have some states that are bellying up to that table. Florida's doing it. Louisiana's trying. Texas kind of does when it's not being Texas. Um, there's a big fight in, I mean, Arizona's not exactly a banner state, but there's a big fight there happening at least.
Yeah.
West Virginia's stepped up, so we're starting to see this here and there. But that happens by literally exposing what's going on, giving convincing and clear explanations to people to convince them, okay, my intuition is right, something's wrong here. And we can get some vocabulary under it and understand what it is, and then we can communicate that to leaders who can do something about it.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. That makes sense. Kind of like a grassroots,
It is
right?
grassroots. It's the real
Yeah.
grassroots. That's right.
Yeah. The grassroots movement of our time.